Everybody, Cement Master here, doing one final video tonight before I go on more important things in life, like recording an album, working on a app that I'm doing with a friend, working on my podcast, working on playing guitar, working on reading, non-political related stuff, working on getting back into the lady folk. Anyways, and working on going to role playing tonight, which I'm doing. So, one thing that I just realized, and something that was really crystallized in me the last couple of minutes, was a debate I was having on this Vanguard video about Kyle Kulinski and Jimmy Dore, and how I'm gonna use code words, YouTube, how Jimmy Dore is anti Max. And supposedly he's anti-Max. Replace the M with a V. Now, I think that let's just get some things straight. He had certain people on his show, like Whitney Webb and Malone, kind of veered towards the conspiratorial part of this whole narrative. Let's just be honest, okay? Regardless of what you think of them, I like Whitney Webb, by the way. I don't know if everything that she talks about is going to really happen. Like Gordon White, the occultist, said, he's like, they're going to try, but they're going to fail. I hope they do, the technocrats and stuff, implementing this system that they're talking about or whatever. Virtual reality, transhumanism, whatever the fuck, I don't know. So, anyways, this is really interesting because I was like, okay, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I was talking to my friend about him, not friends. And he's like, oh, I thought he was good. I thought he's done a lot for mental health. He's been out of the loop of what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is about right now. And then I started putting some things together. Wait a second. Okay. So he's associated with this nutty anti-Max thing right now, right? Ironically, the name of the person is Max that I'm talking about. Anyways, that I was talking about this with. Anyways, just a call out. So, Max with a V at the beginning, right? That's what I'm talking about. Anti that. So, the funny thing is I was thinking, that's the guy with that really crackly, like weird, like vocal fried voice, right? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's been part of these movements and stuff, and is in some of these circles are problematic. I'll give it that. Some of the people way to the crazy side of the whatever you want to call it, the naturalist movement or whatever. At the same time, let's not discount the fact that I found a video from 2014 of Sam Seeger, Mike Palatano, I think that's Palatano or Palatano. It's been a long time. Of Reign of Fire, which is a liberal show that was on Air America, that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. used to be on all the damn time with those two. Usually Mike, but sometimes with Sam Seeger. Them defending him from these attacks, which are attacks that probably Sam Seeger would make today against him and all these people. So it's just kind of funny thinking about this. And I'm thinking about Jill Stein, when she ran in 2016, she was accused of being, what I'm talking about, what Jimmy Dore is being accused of. So I'm coming to this conclusion that it's just so funny how the left, quote unquote, has done this about face with this subject of big pharma and, drugs and, Max-ines, just using code words. Maxine Waters, no, I was kidding. Over the past 10, 20 years. And I'm just like, what caused them to do, what happened in their brain to cause them to go this way? Because in the 70s, like, oh man, they're trying to, it's the same as like fluoride and all this stuff. Now, I think the risks of some of these things are somewhat exaggerated. I'm just going to not lie. I mean, I don't think certain things are going to make men sterile necessarily that are going on right now. That's not why I don't want to get the Wi-Fi boost, right? That's because it's a political decision all in all, rather than I'm not really afraid of doing that again. Now, that said, if I had to do it every 3 months, like in England they're talking about, then yeah, I'm not going to, no. I think that is risky to put that shit in your body repeated times a year. Once a year for other stuff is enough. So this is just so interesting to think about this. Like there's this anti-GMO thing. Trader Joe's still prides themselves not using GMOs and like. So I used to have these debates on Facebook with these people. They're these liberals, more establishment liberals, and they were like, "There's no evidence GMOs are bad. Yeah. Nuclear energy is great. Like." For the environment, we should use nuclear energy. Just these certain people, and I'm not going to mention. It's kind of, hopefully, I feel kind of bad in a way, but it's kind of like, well, I remember when the left was anti-nuclear energy. I remember when the left was anti-GMO. I remember when it was anti-you-know-what. Not anti, but skeptical, and that's what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was. He's like, they put some, like in the ones in the U.S. versus EU, like mercury or whatever, and then they took it out of the United States ones, certain things. And I came to this logical conclusion. I don't think that Robert, I just don't see the grift in him watching him. He's just not, he doesn't seem like a grifter personality to me. He's just, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he doesn't seem like a grifter. He seems like he legitimately believes in some of this stuff. Now, some of the stuff, I think he's misguided about part of it. I think the circles that he travels in are questionable at times, or some of the people that he, surrounds himself with, obviously. I'm not going to deny that, okay? That said, bashing his whole history as a environmental activist and all this stuff based on this one subject is, like my friend Max said, it's really stupid. And it's just like, we can agree to disagree. We could do the research. We can debate. We can have an open conversation. But it's so curious how much the left, at least the establishment left, has come to this turnaround, this turncoatism about these subjects. And I'm just in shock. At a certain point, I'm just like in shock because I see. Other people have talked about this too. Like Six Hexenhammers talked about how it used to be a left-wing thing not to get your children shot up, if you know what I mean, in that way. Get them to be in the give them the needle, so to speak. And I do believe that. I don't know what happened at this point. I think there were certain people in different communities that kind of went, I don't know what exactly what happened, but I think part of it is corruption, honestly. I guarantee part of it's the influence of lobbyists upon politicians. And, some guy, let's say some politicians like, he's pro all these liberal things like pro-choice and, pro-gay rights or whatever, but he comes out, but he has this lobby like, Pfizer gives him $200,000 or $400,000 for his campaign. So he's like, oh, well, no. And then, there's all these public campaigns against the anti-maxes, and maxers, and whether or not there's some legitimacy to that movement or both sides. I'd say that both sides have good points. I'm not going to lie. I had a tetanus shot about a year ago or a year and a half ago, and I don't care. I was fine. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh my God, I'm going to have a tetanus shot and it's going to cause all these things. Ugh. No, it's ridiculous. It's stupid. And at the same time, calling into question things, nothing wrong with that. So it's weird about face. Where did they get the idea that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is some type of lunatic grifter piece of shit who should be canceled. Whereas just a few years ago, some of these same people were appearing at, they were friends they were on the same show like for hours a day. They're probably having dinner at each other's house. I wouldn't be surprised if Sam Seder hung out with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You see him talk about Jimmy Dore now, and it's like, dude, what happened to you? That's kind of part and parcel with what I'm saying, because I think, like my previous video where I said I didn't change, some of the people around me changed, some of the people became more, these things became more entrenched in these political tribes and circles. So for some reason, science, became the, I'm not saying that science is bad, or I'm not saying that, the certain, Max is bad. I'm not saying Maxes are bad, right? Anybody named Max, right? Especially Blumenthal, but no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the switcheroo on this subject, it's not the subject of that even. It's just the subject of Big Pharma. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talked about. I remember listening to Rain and Fire. I listened to all these fucking shows from 2002 on. I was listening to Air America, like even Rachel Maddow, Mike Malloy, Rachel Maddow, fucking Randy Rhodes, Sam Seder, Al Franken, all these people that were on, and then Ring of Fire came on, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Mike Palatino, or whatever the fuck his name is, Palatino. I think it's Palatino. But I used to listen to all that shit, and it's like, oh, now he's not part of the tribe. Like Glenn Greenwald's canceled because he was on Tucker, or Matt Taibbi questioned some of the articles about a certain anti-parasitic. The articles, not the actual anti-parasitic or its efficacy, just the articles, just the media coverage about it. Just like anybody talks about Rittenhouse, is automatically like assumed to be like a Rittenhouse supporter. It's like, no, we're talking about the media coverage of this shit. It's so stupid and toxic. So it's just like, what happened? I'm posing this question, what happened? Why did they cancel Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Just his entire, wouldn't it be better if instead of canceling someone, try to engage them, try to debate them, try to see why they think the way they think, have a conversation with him. It's just a logical extension of him looking at chemicals and environmental impacts of certain chemicals in a region, and they would talk about like cancer rates and polluted places and all this shit. He was an environmental lawyer. Then he got into the the Big Pharma battle, which is a huge labyrinth-like subject. It's just like it's very complicated, very entrenched in our society, and I don't think there's anything wrong with questioning things about that. And this segment was really funny because it was talking about the Maxes in the Sam Seder video. It's still on his channel. It's still on Majority Report. You can look it up. And they're like, just because he has a few questions, Sam Seder's defending evil anti-you-know-what? Oh my God, let's cancel Sam Seder. I know that people tried to cancel Sam Seder a couple of years ago. It was dumb because it was for comedy, but like, this is a legitimate, like, hypocritical thing he was involved with. I think anybody watching this video should fucking ratio Sam Seder about this. What are you doing with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Because he has all these takes about the virus that are just totally toxic. Not as bad as Cenk Uygur or Young Turks. Not quite as bad, because he did question like a couple of things, but still pretty fucking toxic. But yeah, what happened? Tell me what happened. Why does the left, quote unquote left, establishment left, or semi-establishment left, guzzle the jizz, basically? And this happened. This has been going on long before this crisis we're in. guzzle the jizz of Big Pharma. Why? Answer my question. That's about all.